Welcome to Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Parks show with the National Parks Arts Foundation, who are known for their amazing artist residencies in parks across the country. So everybody is Great Outdoors Month, and that's exciting because it gets us out of the house into parks across the country and forests, all those great places. But I'm going to say hello. This is kind of a weird era right now. We are in a little bit of a change when it comes to our National Park Service. So we're going to be talking about that on today's National Parks Arts Foundation show that we do. We call it the Toast of the Arts and Parks show. And what I love about doing this show every first Friday for over 8 years, I think we're going to 9 years now.
Wow.
Is we're talking about the artists in residence through the National Parks Arts Foundation. And these artists get to stay in a park or near a park in a lodging facility and have a full month to create and actually get into a park and also have some time in places, get into the archives, right? And not every national park unit has like this incredible archive that us as visitors don't always get to go into unless we go, hey, I'm an author. I need this kind of, information. Can you help me? And through NPAF, artists have been able to go to places like Gettysburg, dry tortugas on a remote little island called Loggerhead Key. We're talking about places like Chaco Canyon, even up to Aztec Ruins, which is very connected to Chaco Canyon, up in northern New Mexico. Fort Union, incredible piece of history that is the crossroads of the Southwest. We're talking about, hey, all these wars happened there, and it was part of the Butterfield Stage Route and also Santa Fe Trail. All of these things happen all the way to Hawaii. Let's talk about Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. Haleakala. So what NPAF does is they put artists for a month in these places, and the artists get to increase their knowledge of the arts and try things that are new to them and also really get connected with these parks. And then for us, we as the visitor or the people who have not been able to visit, we get to experience that art. So as things change, that's what we're talking about today, the power of the arts, how it transcends, right, Tanya? So welcome back to the show. Tanya Ortega, the founder of NPAF, is back on the show. And not only is she the founder of the National Parks Arts Foundation, but she is also an incredible photographer. And I keep going back to your photos all the time, Tanya. You have this sense of place, and you've done some I go back into, you did a photo once. It was a grocery store. Do you remember that photo that I'm talking about? We talked about this years ago.
Yes, I did a series of grocery stores that were closing. And I think you might be thinking about one specific image in that.
Where was that taken?
That was taken in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That series started in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And those photos, I feel, are, as far as the series goes, the best of that series. And I think the one you're speaking of is probably the entire freezer section of the grocery store. And what I was trying to do is help the audience connect with a place. Again, sense of place, sense of time, like connect with it visually, probably because it was in their past, something like that. And it spoke to me, that specific image, because it is something that we've all done. We've been to the grocery store. It's kind of comforting to some of us to be able to shop, and there's a lot of layers. I won't go into all of the layers.
Well, but that's the beauty, right, for the viewer. And so when we look at what's changing in our parks right now, there's a change. And so everyone's going to be political about it, but reality is change is happening. So how do we handle that? Well, I think the arts really personify that. When we talk about this grocery chain, like going, how grocery stores now are. Like if you look at that photo And then and everyone, I don't know if I can find that photo of Tanya's, but I want to show you that so bad. I'll find it in an old magazine issue and put that link in there for you all to see. I remember on the tour here, as Nancy and I traveled the country full time. Nancy, my mom, and co-host of the shows and publisher and everything. I remember going, and I think I told you this a long time ago. You've been on the shows for over 8-9 years, and I remember going in a little shop just outside of St. Louis area. And it's funny because we're recording this, it's just outside St. Louis too. But this is on the other side of I don't know where. But I stopped and we were super starving. Nancy and I needed like a sandwich or a soda. We were like, we need some food in our bellies. We'd been driving across the country. It was in the COVID time, And I walked into the store and I went, holy cow, Tanya's photos here. But it was a smaller store. And I went like, my God, I'm at home. It was between your photo and also having been in these old school stores like in South Africa, like old times. Like I'm talking 80s, 90s kind of store.
Yeah.
And they had a little deli and they're like, they made the sandwich right there and put it like in a little plastic baggy thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was like two brothers. It was a small store and they were having a conversation. Oh, she doesn't want the onions. Yeah, she does. Yeah. And I'm like, this was like a real, like people. Like we weren't in like the bright lights of, the big box stores. And I got giddy happy and I wanted to photograph inside there because I wanted to photograph. This was a losing place. Like it wasn't losing. We're losing these spaces and they were still going. And then Nancy and I traveled on, not far down the road and ended up in a rest area. They had pollinator gardens. And we both were like, what did we just witness? And now we're having gardens and a rest area where people just stop to pee, but they're having pollinator gardens for butterflies and birds. And, we were just kind of like, wait, this is something the rest of the world doesn't know. And so when I think back to that photo, and we did this conversation with you, I think 8 years ago, I'm thinking about now and our parks and the importance of the arts in parks and how our parks started having protection because of the arts. And then while we are here at the Great Outdoors Month, we're changing. And the arts will always prevail in bringing the parks to people. And there are people who don't ever get out, though I'm going to say our national parks have always been amazing in accessibility. And like you can go to Sequoia National Park, and if you are in a wheelchair or a walker, all those kinds of things, you can actually go and witness these giant sequoia trees, the largest living, thing on Earth, living thing in volume. You can do that. But we're going to have changes. So how important do you feel? Like I'm still sitting on that photo from yours. Isn't that wild? I don't think I ever told you that impact of your photo.
That is really, really nice of you to let me know that you think of that photo. And I do have to ask, when you were in that grocery store in the deli, was my photo actually there, or did you feel like you were in my photo?
I was in your photo because it had the same coloring. It was so old school, this store, that it was like, the beige, the yellow beige. You know what I mean by the yellow beige?
Yeah, that strange
yellow. Somebody said, and then we went to sage and white. Like,
if I'm remembering correctly, the name back in those days of that color was corn husk.
Good Lord. Okay, well, this was in Missouri. I don't know, but your photo, you're in Santa Fe with that, but it was an era, and I stepped into your photo, and I'd seen yours, and I was like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Oh.
And because I think your photo represented a time that was going by, right? You just explained that.
Yes.
And so I'm not saying we're losing our parks, but a change is going to happen. And we're at the beginning of summer season. And so I think we all, as people that go to parks, number one, should understand, be light-footed as best we can, right? Please be as light-footed as we can. Summer is the biggest impact on our National Park Service system, state parks, public lands across the country. And I know, Tanya, you work with public lands, whether it's a National Park Service or state or county, right?
Yes, all of those. Any park, we can have programs inspired by that park or have programs, and I'm just speaking artist in residence programs, does not even have to be about the park. But we do leave that open in the proposal part of our application to tell us what you want as an artist. And we have been able to hear artists. Not all programs are like that. Not even some of the park programs that we advise on. They do that a little bit differently. But thank you so much for thinking about, you were in the art. You felt like you had been in my photograph. Now,
Yeah.
when I was in Lisbon many years ago, and
Ooh.
NPAF was around even before we were designated a nonprofit. So there's many years before that. I was in Lisbon and I went into their major museum, and I can't remember the name of it right now. And I saw one of our, I say that in air quotes, artists had a photograph of Death Valley in a museum from Lisbon. And I was just floored. I know that I've mentioned it before, but this is an example of how we take the parks out of the parks.
Well, I want to also say how important it is in regards to going to the parks after you've seen the art, too.
Yes.
Artists have changed my view of how to look in a park. I think I told you about that with Chaco. How many artists did we interview over the years who have been to Chaco? And you've talked about Chaco, and I'm like, this is like this deep spiritual place, man. What was going on there? Then we got to Chaco, and I'm like, oh, I get this. And
yes,
I need to. And then we went on a tour, and I'm glad we did. But honestly, I like everyone. You need to go to Chaco. And that's a National Historic Site, which may be on a placement of not being a national park status, right? So that's where we're going to have some changes in our country of what our parks are designated as. When you are in the National Park Service as a park, you are looked at as the highest form of protection federally. And so a national park is the top form. And I want to remind our country that the National Park Service started in our country. I grew up in Africa and went to national parks, lived in them, actually was raised as a kid in one of them in the bush when my mom, Nancy, was working with Joy Adamson. Everybody look up the history of Elsa the Lion and Born Free. My mom worked for her, and I lived there for a while, but not on the camp. I lived with 2 different tribes in the bush within a national park, because in Africa and Kenya, a lot of times tribes will actually live within the national parks. And Joy Adamson got murdered, then we had to go to the city, and life changed. But we traveled through all the parks in Kenya and then moved to England, South Africa, and did all the parks there and toured the country for over 2 years in South Africa. Those parks, I always thought, because of the hospitality and the pride, the great pride nationally and like as a continent, safari. If anyone says the word safari to you, do you not think it's Africa?
Yes.
Okay.
My brain goes right to Africa. That's a good point.
Right.
It really is.
And that wouldn't happen without the National Park Service.
Exactly.
So I, as a child and growing up there, always thought Africa's parks came from Africa and national parks were an African thing, and the rest of I thought America was behind. Lo and behold, when we came here, I had to learn, and we wanted to protect parks. National Parks Conservation Association did many, many, many shows with us, and that's prompted our tour of parks and to document and see how are our parks connected to our communities. And then, Tanya comes on the show, artist Victoria Chick has been on the show with you, and then I learned. And going to parks, and not just sitting doing podcasts, we needed to get our butts out of the seat, literally.
Yeah.
We learned, oopsie, the parks were created here in this country. And oh, oopsie, they were created by artists.
Yes.
There wouldn't be any. So I'm bringing this back around right now because as we change, I personally feel like we're losing a little bit of national status, but that's my personal opinion, not NPAF or even Big Blend magazines and Big Blend radio. That's just my personal opinion, but I'm half of Big Blend radio, so I can say whatever. Nancy and I have traveled the country since 2012, full time, pretty much. We've had moments, I think maybe 3 years out of that we didn't. And so I'm going to tell you, we've been to so many parks. And as we started, we said, we're only doing national park units. Then we started documenting forests and state parks and county parks and everything. They all matter.
All of them.
All matter. So as we go through this change, I think we need to lean in and realize we always did these shows on management designations and always said this is going to be important, and it is. But the real importance is how we, the people, treat the parks. And then if you can't get to parks, how I want to go into the arts with Tanya, but I'm just going to say it's how we, the people, treat the parks. We, the visitors, we, the community in the parks, how we treat them. No matter what happens, we're in a time of change. It's how we take care of the parks. I was just in a park, a state park in Illinois yesterday, and watched somebody flick their cigarette butt out of the window.
What?
And I thought, and then Nancy, I had to keep Nancy quiet, in the car. And I'm going, again, it's about how we treat the parks. Whatever happens, it's about that in a way. Tanya, you're the founder of NPAF, and I want to get into the arts, but this change is happening. We can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? So what do you think about what I'm saying about that? About just
the change?
The Lightfoot. Yeah, no matter what happens, we can support the parks.
We can support the parks. Anybody can. And being able to do things like the story I was just talking about, to bring the park out of the park for people who can't, for any reason, go to parks. And by the way, audience, if you don't understand the different designations that the Department of Interior has parks under, it's okay that you don't understand those designations. What is important is exactly that, Lisa, how you treat these wonderful, oftentimes sacred places. And what they call gateway communities, and that is a term that is within the park system and the education that they get. The communities surrounding a national park are called gateway communities. But I just want everybody to know that there are so many different designations that parks fall under, saying the national parks, the National Parks Arts Foundation. That doesn't mean we only work with things that are designated national parks, because even within the Department of Interior National Park Service, not everything is called a national park. And you are absolutely right. To be designated a national park is I hate to say highest, but that's what it is. It is the highest designation, is a national park. But all of the other parks, and many of them are trying to get the national park designations, are just called something else. They're called, with all the different designations, I can't even remember all of them, but I just want everybody to know that we work with any park, any park. It doesn't matter if it is designated a national park or a national monument, or those all fall under parks. So it's hard to figure out what those designations are, and it is not part of what the public knows. So we can work with any park, just
Well,
as well as artists. We can work with any artists.
right. Well, that's the thing. It's hard with the designations to understand it. Like if you go into Sequoia National Park, you'll go in through Three Rivers up into Sequoia National Park, and then suddenly you're in Sequoia National Forest or Giant Sequoia National Monument. I don't even know like which one at the time. And then next thing you know, you're back in Sequoia National Park, and then you're in Kings Canyon National Park. Oh, but wait, you're going to go through the forest again. You know, us as travelers and park people, none of us really know, right?
Exactly.
So it's hard to figure out, but it is how we behave really and protect. There's so many and the parks that end up in the National Park Service, whether it's a historical site or national seashore. Like you've got to look at,
Exactly.
Cape Canaveral is part of a national seashore. By the way, they have a nudie beach there that, it's one of the one and only nudie beaches in a national park unit. Then we have things like Hot Springs National Park with this insane history that's also incorporating a city in it. And they have the only brewery in the world inside a national park that is also the only brewery in the world using hot spring water to make beer.
That is
So
so good. Wait, they were
I'm just,
using hot spring water for beer? That's
yes,
amazing.
no joke. So, I mean, we have these unique things. And so things go beyond, people rallied to make these parks, these designated units. People rallied to make Chaco be protected.
Yes.
So
Artists did that too. I don't know how to say this exactly, but we had more than one artist that created art well, of course, at all of the designations that we have, all of the parks that we work with. And it had an impact on the proposed drilling. Somebody's art who was there, well, more than one person, actually reached so many people, a piece of artwork, an artwork inspired by the park. And it was an abstract piece, in my opinion. It rallied people. And Hyperallergic did this is a few years ago, did an article about how artists have such an impact by taking the park out of the park that people can see it and feel it. Really important stuff. So this artist had a hand in them stopping drilling, and as did people who were so moved by this photograph and another type of work that they realized what was happening there, what was proposed to happen there, and they stopped it.
well, I hope it keeps going on that level. I really do. And I think the arts, I mean, again, we wouldn't have our national parks without the arts. Period.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sorry to seem repetitive, but for those who do not know, and for those who have been through the education of the Park Service, something very important is missing, and not even most of the Park Service employees know this, is that our National Park Service started because artists were paid and were sent to where Yellowstone is right now. What they did is they took it back to Congress. Moran's drawings in a notebook. He was watercolor drawing just in a notebook, not the giant paintings that you see. Those take many years. Anyway, they showed his drawings to Congress and were so moved just in a sketchbook of watercolor drawings that they knew that Yellowstone was an important area, an important place that should not be disturbed. And that is the impact of art. That's just one impact. The National Park Service is created because of artists.
Well, now, when it's Great Outdoors Month,
Yay!
I want to go to that. I know, it's exciting. So please, everyone, have light-footed, because we also have lost a lot of rangers in this whole thing. So,
yes,
there's a big change, like I'm saying. And again, this is not a show about politics. It's about reality, right? Change is happening. And so what can we do as people going there? And, you can obviously, if you want to change things, make change. Call your senators, your governors, your locals. Get involved locally, especially if you live in a park area. That's the important things. Communities and parks are connected. Parks create economy. There was a study done years ago about how if parks weren't, a federal thing, they actually have more profit than Google. There was a study done years ago about that.
Yeah.
And I remember doing tourism meetings, as Nancy and I travel and did a lot of tourism stuff over the years, whether it's like, hey, this is what happened in a wildfire and whatever. But we did a show once, well, not a show, but a speaking engagement once. And it was in a park area, and the communities hadn't quite realized they had this national park in their backyard. It was just more of this amazing places in my backyard. You know how we are about places in our backyard? We only go to them when our friends knock
Exactly.
our door and show up. And so we did this, seminar about this, and we're like, and the superintendent of the park, and this is a national park now, and suddenly people were like, oh, we have a national park, and she said, like, can I just remind you that us as a national park, if you think about Lucy in the Chocolate Factory, Lucille Ball kind of reference here, just think of a factory. People are coming into the park, and you could work with us, and we're bringing the people in. It's up to you to harness that. And they're coming through. It's up to you to advertise and market and go, hey, people come into, this park. I'm trying to not say which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
Come here, because people were just very new to this. And you have state parks, you have regional parks, you have county parks. Honestly, I've been to some trails, you name it. City parks, sometimes, as travelers, we want to stop and let our kids go out and run it off before we go in the hotel room. We want our dogs to do it too before we go to the hotel. Every park matters. Nancy and I have been saying this for years because we learned by being on the road documenting parks full time. Every single park matters, even a small, tiny, little pocket park. And we've seen them. Little pocket parks with a little library next to them. Somebody knows they get a little green space. What's really important? The cities that have them.
Yes.
They say that we need a park. Within 8 to 10 minutes from our home, we need a park just for quality of life, to be able to walk, meditate, and be there. And what do you think the nature needs? It needs it too. So as we go through these changes, I'm just saying, management may shift, but our behavior should be to protect and take care of them and enjoy them too. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter what a park is called. It is a park, and it is nature, and our respect towards that it's necessary. It's also necessary to recognize when things can be made into a park also in the future. I forget the park. There's a park in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it is a tiny park. I can't remember the name of the park. I'm so sorry, everybody. And it is a little triangle park on Palace Avenue and Paseo de Peralta. And they have a sculpture of an artist in this park. This park is tiny. It's a little triangle, I think, park. It is so small. And they have a sculpture of an artist at this park, and he is painting because for years he would sit in that park and paint. It's beautiful, and it's tiny. It's between 3 roads. So yes, no matter the size, no matter the designation, we work with those. We work with communities. And very important, like you said, if something's in your backyard, sometimes you just don't have time. You don't have time to do it or be there, but it is such a benefit. And until very recently, parks and open space, which we also consider parks, was very important for people when they were designing the city, what the layout would be, how many people per square mile, per square kilometer are going to be there, accommodating a green space, a park. And so this is coming back in style with urban planning. And that's an exciting change. That's an exciting change that I look forward to happening more often. So are doing it again.
So this is the thing I think about when we look at change. Artists helped create the parks. We're having change, right? And at the same time, I think, okay, there's so many of us that go, okay, we want to go to the parks. And then we're looking at, we don't have as many rangers and stuff like that. So things are in that shift, right? So we all know, some of our parks may become state parks, but then do the state parks have the resources for it? And all of that gets murky. We don't know right now. We don't. But the artist going to a park bring back these amazing paintings or music or film, and in a way, when we think about how COVID was, nature got to reclaim itself a little bit. So I'm kind of looking at this. I'm trying to look at this change in a positive light. So I feel like the artists are our way to return to these parks if we, you know what I mean? So we may want to be light-footed. Maybe that's our extreme, that we go and say, you know what? Let's not overtax these parks that we know don't have the staff. I'm not saying don't go to the parks. I'm not saying that. But I think the arts have a role in helping those who can't go, and always have, right? That's like not just a now situation. And I want people to still go to parks personally, and go to those parks, go to the communities. That's one thing you can really do. You want to see change and make positive change? Go to the parks, be light-footed, don't throw your cigarette butt out the window or trash, enjoy it, and then go to the communities and support those communities. That's very important.
Exactly.
But the arts, though, I think the arts have been the most consistent thing for parks and people being connected to the parks.
Yes, I think that it has been consistent also. The legacy of art in the park, and like what I just said, artists giving art as the audience can interpret how important the parks are, and the legacy will remain. I like to think about it in a way that with any change that is happening, do you know what's constant? The parks, Earth. Those parks are there. It doesn't matter. If you think about it, they will outlast us by so many generations, and did before we even had those designations. So the respect for the land and the respect for those gateway communities that support the park. And by the way, friends groups. So there's different designations of groups that support the park, and their sort of umbrella, what it's called, are friends groups. And it doesn't have to be called in the name of friends groups. It can be a conservancy. It can be all of these things. For nearly every single park, whether it is a monument, a national park, whether they're in any designation, most of them have a supporting group that comes up with resources for those parks. Projects the parks want to do rely on the community that is part of those friends groups to be able to do so many projects. It's absolutely amazing. It's amazing how communities support the parks, and therefore support the visitors, support the public. Bringing art out of the parks to people. We have had theater in the parks. We have that is brought out of the park. We had one gentleman who created what are they? They used to be called radio shows. So before podcasts, there were radio shows, radio dramas.
I love it.
It's radio drama is kind of like what podcasts are now. So he created a radio drama by being inspired by a park, and he lives in Korea sometimes. And guess what was on the airwaves in Korea? Was the play, for lack of a better word, the radio drama that he brought over there, worked on there, and that is also what he spoke about.
Wow.
In Korea. Guess what now? People in Korea know what that park was because of radio.
Well, but that's what I love about podcasting, right? So we started our magazine as print in San Diego, in 97. And we had Netscape books about the internet. It was dial-up time, right? And I remember selling advertising and telling people like they were spending thousands of dollars on a website. Oh my God, now look at the changes, right? And I mean, you still, if you want a good website, really do that, but not like tens of thousands. Everyone's different. But they were putting their website on their business cards or anything, and we started in the back of our magazine going, the webifieds. because no one was putting their website address, and there was no way. There were no search engines. This is pre-Google. This is how ancient we are. We're old here on Big Blend Radio. And we were the Blend. And we were like, well, you spend all this money on a website. And everybody, I remember going to Main Street Association meetings in Encinitas and thinking I was so young and dumb, scared to stand up and speak. And then I was like, y'all, you're doing all this website stuff, but nobody knows how to find you. Like, it's dumb if you don't put on, like, you need, like, what? You're going to tell everybody in your town that you have a website? And, it was just so weird. And now look at where we are, and how art, this is the beauty about today. Art goes global. I can see Alice Lee's art on the internet anytime I want to. And, she takes me back. I can see her art. She has her page and she posts stuff and she's done so many residencies through NPAF. You can go on Facebook pages. You can go on their websites. Dawn Waters, I follow Dawn Waters all the time. I watch her art. She does amazing work. And I'm going,
so amazing.
But I can look at what Dawn Waters did and versus what, Alice did. And I'm, man, this is 100% night and day, but both beautiful, So it gives you these different perspectives. I haven't been to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, but I've interviewed how many artists over the years, over 8-9 years now. And I feel like I know Hawaii, but I don't, Everybody knows the guy who
looked at the art. You looked at what Alice, what Dawn, what these artists create. So you know.
I feel comfy with Hawaii.
It's important to you now. It is important. I don't know. You would have found out about it in some other way, I'm sure. But to look at the work of the artists is inspiring. And Alice Lee, she is a great example. A great example. At Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, before it even had that name or designation, there are artists up there at the volcano that were walking into the park, into the caldera, and doing their art in a volcano. And we have these from 100+ years ago. It's incredible. The legacy of art in national parks. I'm going to go even a little bit further back. A lot of petroglyphs are in national parks. Those are who knows how old, and it signifies how important art is, whether it is petroglyphs in the park or bringing the parks out of the park with work of artists. It is really important for the legacy, not to mention how it affects people when they see it. It's incredibly beautiful, impacting, I should say.
Everyone to know, in the episode notes, I'm going to put a link to a conversation between artist Victoria Chick and Tanya, talking about the history of art in parks.
Great, thank you.
That was such a great podcast.
It really was.
My God, I loved that interview. And I'm like, shut up, Lisa, just shut up. These two are the biggest and most amazing people. Because, but it is so, I think the arts have always told the history of the times. Honest. The arts are honest.
Yes.
Is that, and it's honest. And I think every person we've interviewed on the podcast over these years, and everyone, we are still working on this amazing podcast archive, this retrospective of artists that have been in NPAF. And I'm working on it, and I'm telling you, I tear up every day I work on it because I'm like, holy cow, I've watched veterans relive history. And I mean, I'm still going back to Nick Collier.
Well, that's exactly who I was thinking about. And Stars and Stripes, which is a magazine, a military magazine, but it's public to everybody. They recorded Nick Collier, who is a photographer and a sculptor.
Amazing.
I don't know how many times you have watched him on the Stars and Stripes video. Every single time I cry. It makes me cry. So yes, it's on YouTube. It is well worth watching because he there in the park, he has his camera. He's speaking to the videographer. It's an interview sort of thing. And he tells the truth about how art has helped him with PTSD He goes a little bit into some of who he considers brothers, and how art, being in Gettysburg and creating art, has helped him deal with those things. It's amazing. It's amazing. I cry every time I watch that.
And then at the same time, he recreated the battle scenes. And I mean, he recreated those battle scenes and put himself into the battle scenes in today's soldiers' uniforms.
Yeah.
As the dead and the going over actual like fences. And I just can never get over that. And Chip Beck was one too. When we look at, our park system includes battlefields.
Yep, it does.
And so we're looking at ancestral sites, and these are not the declared national parks, but they should be. So these artists have done things that, like I think about Nick Collier, like Gettysburg has the cyclorama, which is something that we want to talk about the arts. We can't be in the Civil War. Do we want to be in the Civil War? Hell no. None of us want that. But the cyclorama puts you in the Civil War without you getting shot. Okay? And
it really does.
The cyclorama is the Filippo painters, Filippo or something. I'm sorry, I'm not going to get their name right. But this was a father-son duo, and then they got some helpers, and they created this. It's like a circle around you of what went down and in the Battle of Gettysburg. And we're coming up to that in July here. It's insane. It's insane. But that, if you don't have that artistic, that is what puts you in the center space of what went down. Does that make sense, Tanya? I've not been in it, but I've done interviews on it and seen the artwork and pieced it together. So I've not actually been in it, but I've worked with it on the outside. If as article stuff and putting the pieces together. So I've not actually witnessed the cyclorama, which is something I want to, but even just going through the artwork, I'm like, holy cow, how did these people do this stuff? And it got moved around. The history of this is incredible. But if you want to think about how art can move you, it can put you in a battle without you getting killed. Is that not like the best example in a weird way?
It is. The cyclorama is iconic. And any listeners out there, if you have the chance to go to Gettysburg, please don't miss experiencing the cyclorama. So what that looks like is you, as a visitor, are on a platform and the cyclorama is around you, and the sound design they did is some of the best high fidelity surrounding sound. It is as if you are right there and the painting is there and you can hear all of the things going on. And I do need to mention something else. When we say all artists, we mean all artists, writers, people who do, AI, all kinds of. So at Gettysburg, and I think you might remember this, one of the artists, our artist that was there, so they stay in the Klingel house usually. The Park Service wasn't seeing him outside as much as a lot of artists. And this is a few years ago. And they were worried that he wasn't leaving the house. But what he was doing is he was taking photographs and he stitched them all together like the cyclorama. He put it in VR, which is virtual reality, and he made it so that the viewer could act like Abraham Lincoln and deliver the Gettysburg Address. So yes, you put the virtual reality glasses on and you walk like you're walking, and you are President Lincoln going up and delivering the Gettysburg Address. That is so, I don't know how you could get more immersed into something. It was amazing. There was a line of people, and it's interesting because many artists are out there. They're in the field a lot. He gathered his things in the evening, sometimes when people weren't around, and this is what he made. And it was so crowded when people realized this artist was there letting other people use the headset and do just what I described. It connected them. We have letters from people, from students. We had some schools go there just for this, and thank you letters, because they understood, the students understood, if because of being able to be Abraham Lincoln, for lack of a better term, and they got it. It clicked for them. It wasn't just being taught at school in the words in some textbook. It was, and that's how you feel when you see the cyclorama. That's when you see a beautiful piece of artwork. There is a connection that there's really not a word for when you connect to a piece of art that much. It's so moving. It's moving. And guess what? It doesn't discriminate. Art doesn't discriminate against age, against everything. It doesn't discriminate against anybody. So we can interpret that when we're a child till we're elderly. So that's how important it is.
I agree. It's very important. I think the arts, they helped create and save our parks. They designated something that created something around the world.
Yeah.
You think about UNESCO heritage sites and things like that. Think about going to Peru and going through those heritage sites. That would not be that designated special place if it wasn't for our national park system.
The entire world copied our national park system.
And it started from artists.
And it started from Thomas Moran, and the photographer who went to Yellowstone. Yeah, it's a beautiful story. And artists make change. They're known for that.
And you are still here. NPAF, National Parks Arts Foundation, they will work with parks and communities and artists around the country and around the world, quite frankly. But they are national. That's why National Parks Arts Foundation, just saying national. So if you are a community or a national park, right? It doesn't matter if you're a national park or not, right?
Does not matter if you're a national park, even a very, very small park like the one I described in Santa Fe. Those are important. Exactly. Yes, the rest of the world copied our national park system. Good. I should say appropriated it. But the lasting impact is amazing. Artists I can't think of a time when they didn't have an effect on national park. I'm actually trying to think about that, or any park, really.
Yeah. No, artists have used everything. Photographers, we all think about going on the African safari, right? But how many of us want to get in the boat that the photographer gets in? Okay, let's put it this way. Let's get to real things. Anthony Bourdain, right? He went around the world. He ate food that we actually really don't want to, but we want to dream of we could do. And then he came home and had to take antibiotics, because he ate that food. He lived with the tribes as he lived maybe for a night or whatever. He went places. He did things. And that's what the artists do. They get into the caldera. They hike there. We don't want to do all that. Really? Some of us do. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, and can. So I'm just saying,
Not
in the balance of scheme of life, most of us are still doing our careers and everything. And then the artists go, hey, I'll go in there. And they're going to hike down there. I've talked to so many artists before and in between, volcanoes erupting. And you have a volcano going off in Hawaii right now, So stuff is always happening. And so we talk about that. And artists love change. And when change is happening, as it is in our park system, our National Park Service system, guess who is always there? The artist.
Yes.
Because they are always there during change, telling the truth and letting us feel something that maybe we can't get to.
I like how you said that, letting us feel something. Exactly. It's that connection. The opportunity to feel it through an artwork, whether it's painting, even food, writing, music, all of those things.
Didn't Anthony Bourdain do that for us? It's the same thing as artists going to national parks. It's the same thing.
I hadn't even thought about comparing those two, but that is a really good comparison. And you're basically making a thing to show the public, the audience. That's a good comparison.
Yeah. If we can't get there. And he went through things with wars and all kinds of stuff, man. He had some scary times, And the artists on shows, treasure when it's the first Friday. I either get to talk to Tanya and Nancy too. She's up with dogs right now. She's the dog and animal keeper. But we treasure our times with Tanya because she sat there and had a vision of artists needed to be able to have a residency that wasn't like, here's your 5 days and get out, And we traveled the country, Nancy and I, full time, and we pet sit, and it's like, oh, here's your 2 days, move on. And we're like, we didn't even get to know, we didn't get to know everything yet, on all levels.
Yeah.
And 1 month in a place, we're creative people. We write, we do podcasts, we do magazines, we do all of it. Painting, Nancy, And I can tell you a month and the artists that we've interviewed over the years, and I treasure those interviews. I always want to go, what was your vision when you wanted to go in? What happened? Because it changed. And every single person went in with a vision. And even I remember, I think it was Delbert. It already changed.
Yeah.
By the time they landed, it changed. It changed.
It changed.
I mean, not even getting there for 10 hours, the vision changed, and NPAF allows that because they're like, it's art. It's going to change.
That's
Let
the
it
nature
be.
of art. That's the nature of art.
So
for
when we
sure.
go through a change in our national park system and our public lands as a whole, it's not just our national parks, the arts are there. The arts are there for us, and we should support them, and we should support all the parks as they go through these changes and be there as good stewards. How about that, everybody?
Exactly. Thinking of yourself as a steward, because that's exactly what you're doing when you go into a national park or nature or anything. Like, that is our agency, and we do respect. And I would hope that everybody else would too. That's our job.
And from my personal point of view, I'll say, if you don't like what's happening to our parks, do make that call, write that letter, send that email, do knock on that door. Do it.
Exactly.
And because, that's part of your life. Those parks, those public places, you want that greenery around by your town, your city, make sure you make those calls, those emails, do all that. Do all of that. Because you know what? It can't hurt. If you want those parks there, make sure your voice is there.
Yes, absolutely. And here at NPAF, when we have our meetings and that kind of thing, we actually read every single email that comes to us and listen to people when they have a suggestion. And then we go to the Park Service and see if whatever they suggested is possible. And it really is. The people in the Park Service are really, I don't think I've met one that I didn't like. They are really good people, really just good people.
Thank you, Tanya, for joining us on this special show. Everyone, stay tuned because the next one is on July 4th, and we have something super special coming up for that. Stay tuned for that. Everyone, go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Also keep up with our shows. We're here every first Friday at bigblendradio.com. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you, Lisa, and everybody here. We appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's first Friday Toast to the Arts and Park Show with the National Parks Arts Foundation. Learn more about their amazing park artist residency programs. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.